this still something we're doing? Is this something we know how to do? Is that even possible? I think it's possible. And I think it's functioning. I don't even know what's going to happen. I think that's the best way. Today we are centering vocational vitality, story beings. I am feeling, deepening, sensing what is happening in my body. What is happening in all our bodies, the collective body. All of this outside of me is collective physiology. So whatever interactions we have, we're facilitating the health and strength of the collective body, of the community body. And a huge conversation in all of this, ongoing now for years, but wow, especially recently, is the intuitive economic. What are we doing with the economic spacescape we're all experiencing? How do we navigate all of these contrived artificial structures that were put in place specifically to incline us to believe that that is the only way that it has ever existed? And how do we create new opportunities, new and different options for how we engage with one another, how we facilitate increased connectivity? I have some notes. I will either remember or forget various things. For anyone who joins us today, please reshare the broadcast link. We're very grateful for reposts. They help us a lot so that we can focus on making this part happen. Those of you who can, leave messages in the comments. These are the main questions. What's the story we're experiencing of our vocational vitality, the work that is most meaningful for us to engage with? What gives us the most strength to focus on a daily basis? Is it doing work for another entity that benefits perhaps more than we benefit from expending our life energy? Is there an activity that we feel revitalized by, that changes the moments we're in, that changes the way our physical bodies manifest in the world because we get to engage with that? For me, it's doing this. And it's been very hard for me to find a way to do this because of the most challenging elements of my personal story. The way that I have come to understand the strangeness of me still getting to be here on the planet is through recognizing the story being and my story beingness, and how many other living creatures are also part of my story beingness inherently. We're all influencing one another in ways that we can't even track. I breathe out and you breathe in somewhere across the planet, and the balance shifts maybe just a little bit or maybe a lot, depending on what's going on. Through the collective physiology, we have this nutrient flow, flow of oxygen, flow of life increments, in a way that is fundamentally economic. It's a natural kind of economic. How are we exchanging with one another? What is it that I can do that feels nourishing and strengthening to you? What is it you can do that keeps my heart beating and my breath flowing and makes my body feel more like I am here alive in the world? How do we feed one another in those ways? That's vocational vitality. And we've all come up in a context where it is not vocational vitality that has been centered most of the time. It's been these other forms of extractive economics where we are all essentially in some way being positioned to be commoditized if we don't know well enough what the alternative can be. And so deepening somatic sensing, as we've been doing with Thea Fast, has been so crucial. There's more about that at t.me/intuitive soma, and I will put that link here while I'm at it. Many of our notes are being cataloged on Telegram Messenger. All who see or hear this broadcast are invited to come introduce yourselves at t.me/community IPR. Should I type every single link? I don't know if I can do it. That's fine. I'll type a few of them in the comments for now. Vocational vitality is our continuing conversation, and so many people have been cut off from that. So many people, as sparks coming into being in the world, in our mother's wombs, and then being delivered unto the planet, and having some sense that there's something we're here for, there's something we're really good at, there's something that really makes us feel connected and excited and grounded and real in the world. And then somebody tells us we are not allowed to do that. No, you can't. No, you're not allowed to do that. Bad stuff will happen if you do what really moves you. And it is through trauma, through our lives, in or beyond childhood, through our adulthood, in our elder years. It is through trauma that we are programmed. It is through trauma that we are commoditized so that we help to regenerate resources for others who are not necessarily sharing those resources with us. And so our lives and our families and our community bodies are deficient in crucial nutrients and deficient in the capacity to believe in ourselves and the power of our beingness on the planet, the power of the story being that we all are and are part of, and what attuning with vocational vitality can really accomplish. So we practice every single day in the Intuitive Network, which you will find at www.intuitivepublicradio.network on Substack. How are we reconnecting with our vocational vitality? How are we restoring the privilege of vocational recovery for all those who have, by one means or another, lost touch with it? And what does that take, especially at the most invisible and violent intersections of injury and trauma and disablement? Because people everywhere, even if it's not obvious, are experiencing hidden challenges that they often cannot talk about and don't know who to reach out to for support with, where it turns out that if we recognize the solutions that are most implementable at the most severe and invisible intersections, we then have key elements of activating and expanding vocational vitality for everybody, so that we are all tuning to do our most meaningful work, which is where we are most powerfully positioned. Whoever we are, whatever our lives are like, whatever our experiences have been, when we tune to vocation, we're going to be bringing our very best selves and capacities to whatever situations, whatever problems, whatever challenges need solving. Every so often through the hour of this broadcast, I'm going to put what is it? It's a holding screen. It's the Sacred Rainstorm holding screen right now. And while I do that and sip some water and check some messages across platforms to see if anyone would like to join me on camera during the broadcast, consider whether you might want to share comments about what your vocational vitality is, or how you are seeking it, what feels most meaningful for you in how you share your strengths and benefit, how you choose to generate income that tends to the needs of your body and your family and your community. How do you make your work in the world something that is inherently most revitalizing for you and your capacity to be true to your core self in the world? And then I'll be back within just a few minutes each time that I do that. And we'll keep going and we'll keep finding out what happens next.
I seem to be really attached to gradiating the music down little bit by little bit. Is there like, oh no, wait, look, there's a button. I'll try the button next time. I'm still learning how to use StreamYard, and it is touch and go how this will all unfold. For those who aren't as aware, I have been navigating recovery from multiple concussion injuries, which especially after the past decade of wilderness traveling has meant that I do not have much in the way of short or long-term memory unless I refer to notes or recordings. And every moment where I'm using an electronic device, being highly electrosensitive has meant that I really cannot predict what will happen when I try to do something like this. And it has taken a lot of years to find some way that this now could occur. We started using StreamYard, I think, in 2020. But before that, for quite a few years, we were building intuitive network infrastructure to restore media privilege to people who were entirely disenfranchised from it. And all of our efforts over the years to make it possible for me to broadcast in some way were leading to, how could we do this live? How could we be more fully participatory? And for me to be here now is such a space jump. It's sometime I'll tell you about the dream that I had when I was 14, where it was a space jumping dream. I'll tell you about it a different time. It would take me a while. But for me to be here right now is really a pretty epic moment. And today's the second day I've done it in a row. We should count the days. We should see how many days I can do this in a row, because I'm going to keep trying. I'm going to keep bringing it back. This for me is connected to the most relevant vocational vitality that I could imagine ever having. How can I be in the world in a way where I am able to really thrive? And if I have lost the functions that would have allowed me to make it in the more contrived artificial structures where I could participate economically, if I could follow the needs of those structures, what do I do? And that is why so many of our community members are cut off from economic participation. That is why so many people suddenly find themselves unable to access safe food, safe water, any kind of health support, any kind of recovery support. Once a body cannot follow the rules of those contrived artificial structures for economic participation, what happens to the economics? How do people survive it? And it turns out that really the only people who know the answer to those kinds of questions are the people on the front lines of it who have been having to develop solutions for it. We're getting some spam comments on YouTube that I guess I'll just leave there and be entertained by. I have a comment from our colleague Judy, who I'm so glad to see. Thank you for joining us, Judy. We're working on solutions together in the private intuitive network for what do we do about these situations that so many people don't even know are occurring. And one of our biggest solutions, one of our best conversations is not just help the needy. It's not just, those poor severely disabled people, like we don't know what to do for that. Like it's heartbreaking. Like what can we say? We just do the best we can. We make our peace with it. We soldier on, right? It turns out that when we restore vocational vitality and the privilege of full vocational recovery for every living being, the disabled ones and the not disabled ones, the houseless ones and the well-housed ones, those who are disenfranchised from resources and those who have plenty of resources. That's what makes it possible for us to solve the seemingly impossible problems. When we practice respecting one another in those crucial ways and making sure inclusively that we are restoring that privilege for everybody, that we are recognizing how very different all our languaging can be. People speak a lot of different languages, and a lot of those language might seem like the same language. If I'm speaking English and you're speaking English, our words, our meanings might be so radically divergent from one another. We might think we know what one another means, and we haven't the faintest idea. For instance, the spam messages that are appearing on YouTube right now are a language that is being spoken. It might be a person, it might be a bot. Sometimes it's hard to know. I mentioned our conversations with Saul Luckman in the previous broadcast yesterday morning, where we've been talking about dialogic manifestation, where it's not just the verbal languaging, it's also the nonverbal languaging, and that may have verbal components. So I don't know how to stop the spam, actually. I don't know if anybody has ideas, but let me know if you do. It's not just about the words that are being used. It's about the patterns that are being used. It's about the patterns that are being repeated, whether that's conscious or not, whether it's a set of patterns that has just been like initiated for repeat. I mean, it could be an AI somewhere deploying patterns across, many different locations. And I don't know if somebody's in there on YouTube, I guess you can mark spam or something, but I haven't researched how to do this yet. So I'm flowing with it. The thing is that everything that happens in our lives is speaking to us in some crucial way. We have an opportunity to learn from our experiences in some crucial way. It's on-the-job training for our utmost vocational vitality. And when we receive those opportunities as opportunities, when we realize what treasures are in them, we open ourselves to a form of vulnerability that is also tremendous strength. Oh, look, StreamYard has a thing for this. Okay, here we go. I hit it. Oh, it worked. Wow, good job, StreamYard. Thank you. That was exciting. I don't know how many other people may have seen that. I did. Oh my God. Well, now I know how to do that. So, vocational vitality. I'm in it. Deepening somatic sensing. I'm in it. Because what we're doing now, ooh, goosebumps are happening. What we're experiencing now is a landscape of the unknown. We have a platform called Intuitive Unknown. This one is also on Telegram Messenger. I think people can search these names and find them. We have a lot of public channels on the Telegram Messenger network because it's where our many and varied groups have been collecting some of our notes, some links we're talking about. I would caution you not to make assumptions about what we're conveying when we share a note. It's pretty much always, this is a subject of conversation. What's the conversation? How many different diverse aspects of this conversation are we anchoring? How many different perspectives are we bringing into the conversation? This has been necessary for our vocational vitality because many people experiencing one form or another of severe circumstances or disablement are having their voices silenced and they're being disenfranchised from community conversations. And the way that we have to proceed when so many of us have severe neurological injuries, as I have had with my concussions history, and people have with many different health conditions, many different injuries that people are enduring, we first work to restore our sense of intuitive etymology. What does a word mean to many different people in many different languages? What does the expression of an idea mean to many different people in many different languages? And when we really create a truly, actually inclusive environment where we make it safe for anyone and everyone to in some way participate, either directly or from a distance as they may prefer, we discover the wide variety of different languagings that are being used around specific words or ideas or a URL to a particular article or video or conversation. And the landscape that we're all having to navigate right now is full of tremendous challenges. And a lot of those challenges would prefer it if we get confused about all the different challenges and we come into conflict about those challenges, because people in conflict, you know what, are a lot easier to sell things to. And considering the extensive predatory interests that are out there, I think really operating actually for our well-being in a lot of ways, because then we've got to make better discernments and we've got to figure out how to collaborate with one another to make ourselves more resilient in the presence of the occasional YouTube spammer. Saying, I mean, I don't know how to say it. I don't even want to apply words to it. There are some things that I would say, but I think it's too joyful for me. I won't try to do it yet. There are a lot of reductive and distracting kinds of comments that can be made, or kinds of patterns that can be run to keep people from connecting with their vocational vitality. But when we practice together, we are so powerful in how we navigate that. it becomes a really joyful game. Even though many of us have had to anchor our gameplay from a place of extreme hidden suffering. And so there is a message here from Judy. Thank you, Judy, who says, broken system, sad society out for their own self-gain, false prophets. Where we have a lot of influences in the world right now that want us to attune to them to the detriment of our bodies, to the detriment of our families and communities. And if we look at, for instance, colonial imperialist methodology throughout known history, we're looking at a lot of methodology that is used to split communities and to split families. We learn more and more about that when we talk with our most severely affected community members. If we know how to reach them, if we know how to understand them, there is this wide variety of methods for distracting people from what is most meaningful, what is most strength building, what is most connective, what anchors relational integrity, what anchors collaborative fluency. Because if we do that, we cannot be commoditized in those ways that we see so flagrantly occurring. We recognize the sacred spark that is in each of us. We honor the sacred spark that is in each of us instead of being misdirected to something outside ourselves that we think is the only real, only holy thing. And that's the basis of a huge amount of marketing. And it's also, I think there's a video in Intuitive Market on Telegram Messenger that was posted recently, where the women there are talking about, or the women in our group were talking about a short video conversation where there's a marketer or a businessman who is making a point about how predatory, manipulative marketing methodology is in use by people who have no idea they're using it. So it's not just something that is perpetuated by those bad and evil people, whoever those bad and evil people may happen to be in the conversation being referenced. It's something that has been established in the substrate of the world we're navigating. And so finding vocation is really, really challenging. I could not even use the word vocation for a lot of years. I did years back, and then it got wiped out of my neurology. And the person who restored it for me was Johanna Otigam. And I will put her link here because we are going to have a lot more conversations together. I'll have to talk it out in order to type it because my eyeballs are slightly malfunctioning. www.intuitivepublicradio.network/T/Johanna O. Tigam. Let's make sure that I have that right. I did it. And I will even I don't actually know how to do that. Wait, let's see. Cool. So at that link, you'll find some of the conversations that Joha and I have organized that have made it to the public media, where it was Johanna who first, in my world, me striving to recover from the most severe of neurological injuries. My body could not function. I could not move. I could not speak beyond the most basic ways. I was being killed for long periods of time, severe starvation and other injuries. And with my little threads of interactions that I had established in the intuitive network, mostly using Telegram. Oh, something's having a problem with an internet connection. So if you're listening to this, let me know if you can still hear me. Uh-oh, am I still here? Let's check first. It looks like I am. I might be. We'll find out. I have an auxiliary recording if something happens. Oh, good. Thank you. Thank you, Judy, and thank you, David. It was Johanna who started bringing in conversations about vocational recovery. There we go. And I started to be able to use the word vocation again. And it took me a while to re-anchor with what that word meant, because the concept of it felt so foreign to me. It felt so impossible. It felt like that's not something that we do on this planet. People don't get to do the work that is meaningful for them. I was so far removed from any idea that that could be possible, even while I was working to build intuitive infrastructure, often alone, and then very fortunately with some other very severely disabled survivors of invisibly violent intersections, where we have had to come at this in waves in our somatic sensing and becoming more acquainted with what's really happening in our bodies. What is the sacred work that we are here most intent on doing when we are most true to our core selves? What is the sacred compass of how we tune ourselves? What frequencies we most want to align with? And sometimes what we most want to align with is a form of work that maybe isn't actually that moving to us, but it's still what feels most right for us to pursue at that time. And so there's this choicefulness that gets taken away for so many people. And when we're talking about vocational recovery and vocational vitality, we're talking about that choicefulness. We're talking about how is a living body its own sovereign living body, not just a bot being controlled by some other entity. Oh, look, the YouTube spammer is back, but I know what button to push. I bet that really rattles people. I bet that really rattles people. I'm fine. It doesn't rattle me. It's a pretty exciting new experience, actually. Taking a look at comments. Rue is here. Thank you, Rue, for stopping in. We were talking about how helpful it would be. Yesterday, we were talking about how helpful it would be to have closed captions. I don't actually know where they're coming from in terms of captioning, in terms of transcript, but I did notice that StreamYard has an automatic transcript of some kind that it was there as soon as I was done, or it was actually it was generated after. So, but you're getting captions. I think each platform might be doing it. I think Twitter does it natively. I think YouTube does it natively. We can keep asking them to make adjustments that would be helpful to us, and maybe they will respond. Is absolutely possible. We've been going for 42 minutes, and I am here doing this. We are succeeding at it. It keeps blowing my mind, honestly. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take another break just for a couple of minutes. I'm going to check around some of the platforms and just see if I can notice anybody's messages. We don't really have a main single place for people to reach out and know that I will see them. The best place to message me is always going to be at t.me/communityipr, our public community chat on Telegram Messenger. You can message me directly on Telegram, t.me/Max Morris, M-A-X Morris, on Telegram. I will keep checking the other platforms for messages too. And I think gradually we will notice where we can anchor and make sure that people's messages are received more easily. Certainly, if people comment on here, StreamYard is making it pretty easy for me to follow these comments on here. And I think I've caught all of them with the exception of this one. Well, I think that's the one where I tried to put Johanna's message in. Let's see if I can do it again. It said having trouble with your internet connection, but then I was still there. So that's really good. So maybe it worked that time. It is a really amazing resonant day. And I'll say more about that when I come back momentarily. Well, if it fades in and out using that button, it fades out really, really fast. So then I like to just click down like 5%, 10%, 20%. And I don't know if it's worth it. Is the transition too abrupt? I don't know the answer. So today, in the Mayan Zolkin, one of the Mayan calendars, which we study a lot in the network from our various challenging circumstances, which means that we are not the most knowledgeable day keepers, but we are following all the time because there have been so many benefits for us of following many different sacred ancestral calendars. Today is the 8th day of a 13-day period called a trecena, and it is called 8 obsidian. And there are day keepers we have followed who talk about obsidian in terms of reflection, deep reflection, and also in terms of cutting, in terms of discernment, that edge of discernment or the edge of an experience that may be challenging, like a surgery, like a severing of some kind, or like the step from one facet of experience onto another facet of experience. And I was noticing with the sacred rainstorm image, and I mean, here we have a really beautiful sunny day. Maybe you can see a little bit of, and a moment ago, actually now a little bit, every so often, it isn't raindrops that we have outside today. We have cherry blossom petals that on the other side of the property, there's a flowering cherry tree, and the blossoms cascade over the roof and they end up over here. And I kept seeing in my peripheral vision almost like it was a rainstorm, and I would look a little bit to the side and I would see cherry blossom petals flowing everywhere. Another kind of weather. So I'm going to just sit with this right now here. This is, what do we call this, day 2? We could call this day 2. There are so many other broadcasts, we often don't know where to start counting from. We do know that at this point in our journey of story beingness, we've achieved some things that we thought previously could not be achieved. And we have become accustomed to people around us really being entrenched in a belief that it is not possible to address the kinds of challenges that we've been successfully addressing. I have a continuous practice of being really present with that and bringing myself back again and again to be really present with that, because it can be hard to anchor it, especially with all of the challenges to our vocational vitality that we find pretty much in every environment in some way. Sometimes it's very subtle. There are some really supportive environments out there for anchoring with one another and keying into our own most important work. How are we going to thrive? How are we going to have what we need? How are we going to care for our families and our communities? And also, even in the best of those places, there is often a lot of very subtle elements that work against us in doing that. And the most severely affected people end up having to root those things out and identify them in order to mitigate them, in order to create solutions that will assist with those situations. Because otherwise, there are a lot of very severely affected people who could not participate even in the most caring and respectful and honorable environments. And so we've made a in-depth intersectional study of all of these different components and all of these different very subtle elements that work against vocational vitality, so that we can do everything possible to restore our own capacity to do our most meaningful, most powerful work. And that has ramifications. It has beautiful consequences for everything, for everybody. It maybe not for people who are really heavily invested in controlling the people around them or commoditizing the living beings in their environments. That it may not work for them so much. But that we also see as a very difficult position to be in. That's the position of someone who's really suffering, who feels that they have to control and commoditize the living beings around them in order for them to be safe, in order for them to have what they need. And so they also need true resourcing for vocational vitality. What is more meaningful for them than that is a question that we often ask. And meanwhile, those of us who are here in this conversation, on this broadcast or anywhere in the network where these conversations are ongoing all the time, what are the powers that we have to really change the game and co-create economic benefit for all, not just for some, not just for those on the top half of the colonial imperialist capitalist balance sheet, but also those on the bottom half that have been made so invisible, upon whose broken, battered bodies much of our contrived artificial economic structures have been built upon. When we recognize who are all the living creatures in our environments and how do we come into a more natural, intuitive economic with them, respectful of one another, recognizing that there are many differences, there are many different languages. What's the natural kind of economic physiology that emerges when we center with one another in that way? And we have found in the intuitive network that practicing these what we often call intuitive tool sets is restoring for us our functions for economic participation and for a lot of other parts of our lives that otherwise everyone around us thought was not, it could not happen. It would not be possible to happen. And here we are doing it. And all these years, one way or another, I've been broadcasting public media so that people can see the difference, so that people can see the transition from me barely being able to communicate to me being able to do this right now, in such a startling and astonishing way. We have taken this all the way up to 2 minutes to 11 a.m. Eastern. So I did it. My head feels funny. My eyes hurt. I definitely need to orchestrate more of a break from looking at screens. I'm fantasizing about live streaming without ever looking at the screen. I'm not totally sure if I can accomplish that without more assistance, but it's a dream. It's a dream I'm having. I'm so grateful to everyone who has joined me and us today. Please subscribe to us on Substack, www.intuitivepublicradio.network/subscribe. Please share our broadcast links wherever you find them. Please tell people you know about what we're doing. The more of us who come together in this, the more powerful our outcomes. And I am feeling really good thus far about our successes. So those of you who have been tuning in and sticking with us in this, you have been instrumental to that. We cannot do it without you. And it's such great fun to realize that we're accomplishing it. It's 11 a.m. I'm signing off. I'll see you tomorrow morning.